GM. GM. So, today is Sunday, 4th of January. Fuck. 4th of February. One of these days, I'll get it right. And let's look at daily levels. So, looking here on the weekly chart, total market cap is in a really messy place where, as I said a few weeks back when we topped out at the ETF, I expect something like this where it just goes messy, choppy, directionless, no clear trend. You know, this chart to me doesn't look ready for a breakout. Yeah, I think it needs to consolidate for longer. What I would actually like to see is that it kind of grinds around and fills up this gap slowly to then have a proper breakout. That would be the best possible outcome for the market cap, the total cap as a whole. Otherwise, you know, it can go lower. There's obviously a big gap below. It can drop back down into some of that. You've got the bands now, 50, 100, 200, all in the right order on the weekly, which is great. Perfect. We had the bands bullish throughout the bull market, crossed over into being bearish or neutral in the bear market, and now we're back to 50, 100, 200 in order. So really anywhere above that 1.3 is still fine. It's bullish and would be considered just a typical bull market correction, a bullish correction. So, but obviously people will lose their fucking minds if it takes this red path, right? Because that would be whatever, 20-30% total cap drop, 20%. That would just smash some alts. People to really panic. I don't know. It depends. Last week's reversal was very nice, and you can see that, to me, this is a pretty strong demand until proven otherwise at that level, where price held once, twice, pushed higher, held again. So that's the key level. I do think we'll come and retest that again. I think that's still pretty likely. You know, the longer that prices stay up, so like you got Bitcoin holding up really well, the longer the prices stay up here, the more people are going to get long. And the more people who get long, the more likely it is that we flush back down. But the question is, where do we go to and where do alts go? So you got Solana, looking at it here. Like, I think Solana itself just has a much better structure than most coins. It's pretty clear to me that Solana is going to hold up in this area. I still don't think it's going to go to the moon, you know, imminently. I think more chop, more sideways, even a bit more down, right? Dropping down towards the 100, could even do that. But I think Sol will hold and eventually go higher. Sol, BTC, this is really what you want to be watching, right? Any of these BTC charts and getting your 12-21 bands on. That'd be the way I would look at it. So I still think Sol can drop back a bit into the bands, or the bands can catch up. To me, this is the most important chart for any coin you're looking at. You want to compare it to Bitcoin, because I don't think this cycle is going to be anything like previous ones. I think this cycle is going to be heavily dominated by Bitcoin, and I think most people are abandoning Bitcoin too soon, because they've been conditioned to do that, right? Everyone's conditioned to ape into altcoins, and obviously, if you pick the correct alts and you have patience to hold them, you will do well. They will outperform. That's why I'm holding Akash as a big cycle play. But in general, the potential for BTC to go to massive numbers this cycle is there. We have proper institutional adoption. We've got all of Wall Street. We've got ETFs. We've got the halving coming up. We've got Bitcoin acting as a high beta gold, which it didn't in the past, right? In 2021, Bitcoin did not follow gold. It followed really the stock market and interest rate expectations. But now Bitcoin and gold are like the monetary debasement hedges, and Bitcoin's just superior in every single way, and it's crossing over, and it's 10 times smaller, right? Gold is 10 trillion, Bitcoin's not even a trillion at the moment. There's just loads and loads of room for growth. So to me, Bitcoin's a clear winner. And then outside of that, you want to look at things that have a good Bitcoin chart, because if it's outperforming against Bitcoin, that's a big, big sign. So Solana is clearly outperforming against Bitcoin since the lows of June. It's in a nice consolidation here. I expect that to continue. I expect it to push to all-time highs against Bitcoin in this cycle at some point, because it's done everything you'd want to see. All right, it had its 2020 run. It ran all the way up, crashed all the way down, made a higher low, recovering, right? So everything about Sol from that perspective looks good. So to me, it's for the majors, I struggle to see anything more appropriate than rotation between Solana and Bitcoin. ETH, I don't think, is in the race at the moment, right? It's still just on every single time frame outright bearish, and that's it. I mean, you can't deny that. It's just completely bearish. It's put in a massive reversal week like it had done over here, but instead of continuation, it just immediately rejected. And I struggle to see where it's going to go from here, or where it's going to build up any strength. It will, right? I have no doubt ETH will have a run at some point, but it doesn't seem like it's going to run against Bitcoin. So if it's not going to run against Bitcoin, then why do I want to own it? I don't. Bitcoin's better. Bitcoin's bigger. Bitcoin's got more access to both retail and TradFi at the moment. Bitcoin's got a cleaner narrative. It's also technologically superior in terms of what it's supposed to be, which is money. And collateral, store value, property rights, all that kind of stuff. But the big thing is I think timing, right? In 2020, ETH had its main run kind of came after the Bitcoin all-time high. You had a little pop-up here in DeFi summer, but then Bitcoin ran to all-time high, which was this decline. Then ETH into 2020, 2021 had its run, which if the 4-year cycle holds even roughly, that would be the end of this year. That's 11 months away. So I think there's a time and a place for ETH. There always is. Every cycle, ETH, the same thing happens, right? ETH gets shit on every cycle, and ETH eventually comes back and runs and has a good move every cycle. But I wouldn't be surprised if ETH was like here, right, before its final kind of capitulation. Maybe people bet too soon on the capitulation for ETH versus Bitcoin being over, and it has to struggle a bit more. The thing is, I'm just so bullish Bitcoin, like incredibly bullish Bitcoin for this year. And so I think ETH goes up in dollar terms. I think everything goes up in dollar terms. But given that I'm so bullish Bitcoin and I see so many bullish narratives ahead with ETFs, with halving, with the inevitable, this is the other thing too. There are inevitably going to be more billionaires, more massive companies, maybe even countries, maybe the Saudis. They're going to buy Bitcoin. Some of them, some companies, some people, some entities, they're going to buy Bitcoin. They're going to announce that they've bought Bitcoin. Like, that's going to happen this cycle. We had it last cycle when Bitcoin was far less of a accepted, mainstream crossover asset. It's the 10th largest asset on the planet, Bitcoin. The 10th largest. Behind gold and Saudi Aramco and Apple and Amazon and all that. It's 10th. It's almost catching silver. It's close to catching silver, which is 1.3 trillion, I believe. Bitcoin's about 800 billion at the moment. And so last time we had Tesla, we had MicroStrategy, we had Square. So apart from Tesla, they're mostly like already crypto native. And we had El Salvador. But this is going to be like 10x of that. It's not going to be El Salvador, it's going to be Argentina, right? Not saying it will be Argentina, but it's going to be a country of that size. It's going to be a bigger country. It's going to be bigger companies. It's going to be more support from bigger players. The green light from Larry Fink is something you really don't want to mistake. It's no longer risky to own Bitcoin. It's not risky. There's no risk in owning some Bitcoin. The risk comes from how much you own. Right? You put 100% of your net worth in as a billionaire. That's pretty crazy. Like Michael Saylor. Gee. It's paying off for him, but he's been at this for 3-4 years now. But it's not risky to own some. And then it becomes game theory. Once billionaires start owning it, and once companies start owning it, and once the ETFs, it's just normal to put 1% into your treasury, into your portfolio, or into your savings or whatever, into your accounts, then imagine the entire world doing that. To me, that's the world we're heading towards. Because whether Bitcoin, like the Maxis say, whether Bitcoin is the new global reserve currency and it eats and cannibalizes the whole financial system, like I don't think that's going to happen. If it does, it's 20, 30, 40 years away. But the idea that that could happen is going to be what spreads. And people would say, look, if this happens and you don't have some exposure, you're going to lose out. So why not put 1% in? That's all it is, right? And there's something like 40 trillion or more, 40 or 50 trillion dollars in the US stock market, bond market, like the financial system, TradFi, Wall Street, BlackRock of 10 trillion, Fidelity of 7, and there's like trillions more throughout the system. So even if it's 20 trillion, 1% of that is 200 billion. $200 billion would have a fucking insane effect on Bitcoin even over the next year. Of actual new flows, that's enormous. 200 billion is a quarter of the current market cap. If there's 18 million tokens, that's about 4.5 million tokens or coins. There aren't 4.5 million coins on exchange. There are never 4.5 million coins in circulation. There are usually a maximum of 2 million. The rest are locked up. 75% of Bitcoin is in cold storage. So the supply shock is enormous. And so back to the point about ETH. For ETH to do well, all of this needs to happen to Bitcoin first, and then ETH goes. So this whole thing about being like a bear or a bull on certain coins, I think is stupid. Outside of Bitcoin, which I'm just a forever bull on, right? Because Bitcoin is, I think, something totally different to the rest of crypto. But everything else, like, are you a Solana bull? It's like, if the time is right and if the chart is right. Are you an ETH bull? Yeah, at a certain point. I'd love to be an ETH bull in December 2020 until May 2021. Right? It's always with a caveat of time. So don't listen to people who are like bears on certain coins or bulls on certain coins just rigidly. Again, outside of Bitcoin, which I think is the only one where you can just be a perma bull because it's the coin. It started the whole fucking thing. The very first one. Everything else is a derivative or a copy of Bitcoin. Everything else is riding off the back of Bitcoin's success. There would be no Ethereum without Bitcoin. There would be no Solana without Bitcoin. None of this exists without Bitcoin. And that's important. So, for me, looking forward, I will be a bull on all these other coins at certain times when the time is right. So, as I look at it today, and I'm kind of doing this just because Sunday price action, not much happening. Just kind of an update on my thoughts. There's ETH BTC. There's Sol BTC. That's why I'm a Sol bull over an ETH bull at the moment. But if these charts were inversed, I'd be an ETH bull over a Sol bull. It's really simple. And you can look at Sol ETH to compare the two of those. Sol ETH is in a massive, clear uptrend, holding the weekly bands, looking strong, consolidating nicely, almost at all-time high. Like, you know, you have to put away the the fucking philosophical debates or the maxi debates or which one's better, this is more decentralized, this one's cheaper, this one's faster. None of that shit matters. Everything will have its day in the sun. If you're an investor, then you have to choose your investments, right? That's a different game. But I'm a trader. And for me, investments, Bitcoin. That's what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin's the best. I want more Bitcoin, always. More Bitcoin, more Bitcoin, more Bitcoin. And if the charts look good, I'll swap some of my Bitcoin into ETH. I'll swap some of my Bitcoin into Sol. And equally, if there's a new fucking, if Say or Sui or fucking any of them do well, the same thing applies. This also applies with AKT, right? Which I'm obviously super bullish on AKT because of all the great things about AI and the project and how I've tracked it, but also the chart is amazing. It's in an uptrend against Bitcoin on the weekly. A really solid uptrend where it's having this consolidation at the highs with inside weeks and tight compression, which usually leads to continuation. If AKT looked like this, I wouldn't be bullish on it. Right? First and foremost, you trade the chart. And as soon as anything changes from any of those charts, so too will the approach. Once something stops looking good against Bitcoin, sell it back into Bitcoin. You don't have to, this is the thing, when you feel like you're bearish on something, you don't have to go back into cash. If you still think it's a bull market and the market's going higher, then it's Bitcoin by default, for me, Bitcoin by default, and then everything else is a choice to swap my Bitcoin into something else. Simple, right? And so I think the ETH, here's the other thing. Sol maxis will be right at some point. ETH maxis will be right at some point. Bitcoin maxis will always be right over the long term. So in between, what you're going to see is a lot of negativity and spite and pessimism and fighting because Sol's going up and ETH's not. Then you're going to see a lot of like, I told you so, whenever ETH's going up and Sol's not. But those are just, that's the natural rotations of strength within the market. And so that's my goal. Hold Bitcoin, play everything else against Bitcoin when the time seems right. And I really urge everyone, remove any of this fucking bag holder bias about altcoins. This one's the best. It has to do well. It has to do this. It doesn't have to do anything. It doesn't have to do anything. Right? Your best laid plans could just be totally trash. Might end up just not working. Cash might just trend down against Bitcoin now all the way back to fucking zero. I don't think it will, but that can happen. But if you told people that, they'd get angry and upset if they're AKT maxis. It's like, why? If you're not open to new information, you're never going to make money. Because at some point, guess what? The bull market will top. A cash will top and it will go down 90%. So if you get offended every time someone tries to say something negative about the price action or the market or the outlook of your coin, you're going to end up ignoring the top and bag holding it down. That's why it's so dangerous. So, just a little Sunday note. Remain open-minded. Remember that everything has its day in the sun. And that'll set you up best for the rest of the cycle.